Things fall apart. The aftermath of Earth's First World War promised a perpetual peace, a return to normality and time of plenty after years of privation. Tom paused to consider the opening remark. The classes on the First World War seemed a sharp contrast to the Shovantes' final war of unification. Perhaps it was the images of young men, their own age, that shocked the girls. While the war game had been intended to lighten the mood, having the girls watch They Shall Not Grow Old had made their visceral understanding into a stark reality. He hadn't been sure it would work, but their papers reflected a sense that it had. The war affirmed nothing, and an entire generation of young men had been lost in the literal and figurative senses. In America, women gained the right to vote, which might earn a smirk or two, but by now the class understood the significance of gender alternatives. He'd asked Mavera about the same issue for Shovanti men, and being startled at how long that had taken. It made sense, given the fortress-like mentality the Shovanti, indeed most races in the galaxy, had toward protecting their men. And while voting was not really a thing for the Shovanti anyway, public service was. Technology had freed them in much the same way it had freed human women, but perception always lingered behind reality. The Chinese Communist Party was founded and held its first national congress 3 weeks later, attended by a 27-year-old Mao Zedong. Mao had been the son of a wealthy landowner and well-educated, in every sense a young noble, yet he rebelled against his Confucian education and his arranged marriage. The idea would shock the girls and bore mention, if only to lay the ground for what came after. It was necessary to consider the turbulence when Japan entered Manchuria. The Mukden incident of 1931 had been the true start of the Second World War. And for the life of me, I still don't know how to split the Axis and the Allies. All of them will play the sim to win, but what lesson will I teach by it? The Axis comes with obvious baggage, but while the Allies will probably win, do I need to reinforce the idea that conquest is a great way to fix your problems to a classroom full of Shovanti? And one Pesrin. Zinchiki had done interesting things with the Japanese Empire during the World War I sim. As her hahakt, there was a certain appeal to letting her see how that tree had borne fruit. On the other hand, giving the Axis powers over to a class full of interior cadets feels like showing the next generation of interior agents just what you get when an ideological military power is turned loose without oversight, right down to the jackboots. Is that justice, or is that me being vindictive? God knows I'll need the lesson as much as Kalera. Fine. The interior kids will get the Axis. The British Empire commanded a quarter of the Earth's population at the start of the war. In the years that followed, it began to shrink. Granting independence to Egypt had been the first step of many. And what role do I drop Kalera into? She's the right age to emulate Elizabeth. The forces in play would speak to Kalera in ways that Roosevelt never would. Russia had been turned inside out by the Communist Revolution. The bloody war between the white and red saw Lenin come out victorious. By 1924, the mantle passed to Stalin, who cemented his power through the exile or execution of anyone he perceived as a threat to his power. Purges hobbled the country as it descended into a new form of tyranny, and the brutal murders of the Tsar and his family would be a retching experience for the girls. Nor had the West been without ideological tribulations. After teaching the theory of evolution in a high school, Tennessee prosecuted an unknown science teacher named John Thomas Scopes because the law prohibited teaching science that ran counter to biblical beliefs. The trial pitted Christian fundamentalist and former presidential candidate William Jennings Bryan against the renowned attorney Clarence Darrow, and the jury ruled against Scopes. And the Imperium doesn't typically mess with religion. Holidays, yes. Religion, no. But pitting religion against science won't go down as our finest hour. Right after a Roe v, there will be questions galore. But there have been triumphs as well as turmoil. Charles Lindbergh became the first person to fly over the Atlantic Ocean non-stop, cementing his role as a hero of the age, followed only a year later by Amelia Earhart. Earth grew smaller as progress marched on. The promise of boundless progress took root in the public imagination. The global recession hit thanks to overlending by weakly regulated banks, excessive stock price valuation, purchases made on margin, and an unrestrained exuberance without proper economic controls. The girls will probably see it as a well duh moment, and I can't blame them. Imperial business works more like a British trading company out of the age of sail, but given the size and travel times, it can't be anything else. Imperial trade is regulated to the gills, but the girls will understand it didn't happen overnight. Despite the grip of the global recession, the Empire State Building was completed in only 13 months, becoming the planet's tallest building for the next 40 years. At a mere 86 floors, it was comparable in size to a smallish Shorvanti apartment building here in the capital, but that didn't matter. The building was a landmark, a symbol of expansion and power that towered over the skyline of a sprawling metropolis. That was a lesson the girls would understand. Things fall apart. The aftermath of Earth's First World War promised a perpetual peace, a return to normalcy and time of plenty after years of privation. Tom looked to Miv and Lani, who were acting as his audience. And it failed. Lani glanced at Mivere before speaking. You know, I've been following your classes since the beginning, and I'm not going to try and lecture you on humanity. I understand you're contrasting your history to ours, but is this material really appropriate? Things fall apart, the centre cannot hold. Mere anarchy is loosed upon the world, and everywhere the ceremony of innocence is drowned. The best lack all conviction, while the worst are full of passionate intensity. Tom stopped when he caught the look on Miv and Lani's faces, which was a study in contrasts. You know, Miv married you just in time to rein in your wild optimism. Lani gave him an arch look. Honestly, please don't sing that. It's enough to make a happy woman slit her wrists. It's a poem, not a... Never mind. Tom pursed his lips as Lani arched one eyebrow. Kalira is under attack, which you understand better than any of us. More than anything else, I think she needs to learn about conviction, so I think it's utterly appropriate. Maybe from a human point of view, Kalira isn't short on her convictions, she's just developing what those convictions will be. Lani turned the idea over and looked at them both. You know she has us for this sort of thing, though. By which, I mean a whole palace there to support her. But just now, it isn't. Miv interjected with a Cheshire smile. And you can't complain about Tom bringing his work home with him. After all, that's included you. Tom listened, as Miv and Lani traded thoughts. Mivere was Kalira's professor. Solani was one of her bodyguards. Listening to them kept Solani from fretting over her operation the day after tomorrow, and it helped him make up his mind. Right, so what I'm hearing is this material needs more context, Tom broke in. While only housemates for a short time, their heads cocked to one side in unison. Such was married life. It's getting late, but maybe I can send them a movie as some class material, something they can watch with the Rhythm kids too. A little prep work since they're auditing the class? That may come as a relief. Miv covered her eyes, but he could see her wince. Desi told me they got together to watch Magical Sailor Biz Hen. It seems to be Master Alantel's choice, and our girls aren't going to say no. Oh, goddess, I may gag. Lani clutched her side. I caught 2 minutes of it by accident, and I swear I could feel my femininity draining away. Okay, I'll ask, Tom said warily. Something tells me it's not about yacht racing. A boys' movie. Lani snorted and rolled her eyes. And please tell me you don't enjoy magical boy transformations into... Stop! There was already a yeoman warder's uniform hanging in his closet, which the gals thought was dashing. If it made Lani gag, the possibilities were nothing less than ghastly. On second thought, I do not want to know. It's very popular with some boys, Miv said innocently. Tom spotted the look in her eyes that said, Go on, I dare you. He didn't feel like taking the bait. Fine. I'll send them something to watch tomorrow night. The night before term starts. Won't they be doing something practical like drinking themselves blind? Lani scrunched down comfortably on the sofa next to Miv, who took her natural hand. It wasn't something human men would do, and Tom saw the care beneath the surface. The procedure for Lani's arm was supposed to be easy, and she was playing it cool, but he had to admit he was concerned. That was a pose all its own. The girls never struck me as drinkers. Vascon girls learn to drink from a very young age. Miv shrugged gently, without disturbing Lani. I'm sure there are parties around the campus tonight. Lani shook her head emphatically. I don't think I could get through magical sailor biz sober. Now the pups were in bed, Tom Steinberg had an hour or so to make a few more improvements to the new bomb. Making bombs was an art form all its own, and he had his own style. Because of that, he made a point of erasing that style every so often and going back to basics. He was just having fun at this point because in the end, it would definitely go boom. But the mercury switch to set it off if anybody opened the backpack was just absolute genius. It wasn't often Tom praised himself, but he deserved this one. It wasn't like off-the-shelf parts were easy to get around here. Well, they were, if he knew what he wanted, but it was a whole different menu of stuff. Right now, he was just improvising, but it was pretty fun. He opened the liquor cabinet and withdrew the good Goljaka. He deserved it. As he poured himself a drink, he only vaguely noticed Shanky waddling away with a bottle. Tom just shook his head. Luckily, Reinhold didn't seem to get hangovers. Make sure you take the cheap stuff, buddy. Yeah! Shanky held up his bottle of wild turkey for Tom to inspect. It was rotgut, but it was the rotgut he had left. Okay, normally I'd say have at it, but I had to import that from Earth. Find another bottle. Yeah! Shanky started digging through the liquor cabinet, pulling forth a bottle of cheap Bunringa something or other. Yeah, that's fine, but don't yar at me in that tone of voice. Shanky raised his flipper at Tom, then uncapped the bottle and started chugging. That much alcohol into one little body always kind of blew his mind, and Tom shook his head as Shanky guzzled half of it down without stopping to breathe. How are you not dead the way you drink? Do you just, steal other animals' livers? Is this an X-Files episode? Yeah. Shanky wandered off to the living room, chugger lugging all the while. Tom watched his little green buddy wander off and shook his head. The possibility of a drunken green ball hit a solid 100% in the future, but the pups were asleep now. Fun was fun, but now was the time to get things moving. Tom got on his omnipad and the call picked up after a couple of rings. Hey, Jabber, I have the next batch of cookies ready for the bake sale. For the last time, it's Chara. You know what? Fuck it. Just remind me to try one of those cookies someday, sweetie. Whatever insane code word Tom used, Jabba was always great at playing along. It's how they work so well together. Now, fill me in. Details. I'm keeping them in a backpack with lots of chocolate chips. Gonna sell them at the Bucaneri Enterprises building, the one with the third-floor supercomputer. The Bucaneri clan had been an enemy of Tom's ever since he'd come to Shill, and it probably didn't hurt that a mysterious benefactor had personally buried their matriarch and patriarch in concrete. Just bankrupt the rest of the family. That isn't going to work. And Tom's thoughts came to a screeching halt. Sorry, what? My people need people to eat the cookies, Tom, and they want them at a particular spot. They sound too delicious not to offer somewhere a little more public. Translation. We're gonna give you a target, and it's gonna have people. Tom was at a loss for words. I'll see what I can do. I'll call you back. He hung up and leaned against the wall. As he slid to the floor, Tom began hyperventilating. Duchess Eliana Varun looked over the evening news for mention of her niece's birthday party. Finding coverage in the social pages required less than a minute. The Kenny Visapoi weigh-ins never failed to deliver, although the double entendre was growing old. Visapoi was a robust woman who felt comfortable in her own skin, which translated into badly needed to lose weight. As a media butterfly, a children's party would not mark a high point in her career, but she seemed to do personal interest stories now and then. Perhaps her sister, Centrini, had gotten lucky getting coverage for her daughter's birthday party, if lucky was used extremely generously. At the tender age of 5, her niece, Andresia, was a precocious child, of the sort that made Eliana glad she never had offspring. Still, a theme party inviting all of Centrini's friends seemed just the sort of thing she'd do. People with children seemed to inevitably devolve into the sort of people who could only talk about their children. Never a conversational wit, Centrini's party doubled as a business fete, which was just the sort of inane affair Centrini would indulge in. As a highlight of the festivities, Jassi and the happy Pesrin Funshine Band appeared. A children's favourite, the costumed cartoon character actors had been particularly convincing. Reading between the lines, it came off as the adults were all drinking while servants looked after the children, though not all of them. Apparently one of the tykes eluded attention, only to be discovered dead. It was an almost anticlimactic act to the party, which has seen some dubious planning from the start. Despite the ostensible reason for celebrating her daughter's birthday, to say nothing of the weather this time of year, Centrini had seen it as a wonderful time to have a pool party, complete with advertising her latest scheme: sunscreen lotions. While certainly a balm for salty water and good for use, the party planning also called for a lewdly-shaped air car dubbed the Spurtmobile to arrive and dispense lotion over the gathered crowd, using some sort of modified pressure hose. Hijinks would abound while cameras captured the scene. Eliana paused the story, musing over the spectacle of lotion squirting from the phallically shaped cargo lifter, and the direction civilization was taking. Apparently untested, the hose failed to function as promised. Jokes must have abounded, and a dubious huddle would have ensued, but Visapoy's story announced the Spurtmobile would have driven around the party while Bren Maharin, a recent trophy husband of one of the mothers, showed off his legs and tossed lotion bottles to the attendees. It hardly mattered it was the middle of winter. Brain Marahin was now an ex-lab assistant, recently employed by Lilu Bagosi on her Animal Doctor show. With Princess Camordra's death, the show tanked along with Bagosi's theme park, whittling Bren down to a sole career as a trophy husband. Any photo opportunity probably looked good, even before the liberal application of alcohol. Then a crisis struck. The Spurtmobile set off at a leisurely pace, but promptly hit a sand patch, fountaining beach sand over the party of inebriated guests in questionable pursuit. Already pre-spurted with lotion for the cameras, the sand immediately stuck to them like spackle. To her credit, Visapoy had an eye for the camera. One shot showed Brain Maharin smiling gamely, though behind his golden eyes, you could tell he'd realized his career was now over, and that it would be nice to use a crowbar on whoever dreamed up the Spurtmobile. While parents were cleaning themselves off with the assistance of the party staff, the party tent somehow managed to catch fire. During the pandemonium, one of the children began screaming. A divorced co-mother had put in an unexpected appearance, with questionable motives regarding her ex-family. The child in question was found bludgeoned to death. Despite restraints in the woman's air car, there was no DNA evidence linking her to the death. Maintaining she'd been invited, a fight ensued between the two estranged women, who both ignored their husband. A barrister in attendance, though slightly singed, was mounting a hasty defense around their theory of falling debris while threatening Cetrini with a lawsuit. Vikeni Visapoy's personal interest story was pulling double duty along the crime pages. Cetrini would be doing damage control to her social standing, and little Adrazia might be emotionally scarred at the loss of her playmate, if she knew the deceased at all. Therapy would be prudent, as the little monster had needed it already. None of it mattered. The party had been utter mayhem. An unmitigated disaster from the outset, it was now replete as a crime scene. Yet somehow, in all the confusion, Jassi and the happy Pesrin Funshine Band disappeared without being questioned, all of which made them perfect for her plans. Though few in number, the Stone Mountain Warband was dangerous, stealthy, pliant, and utterly expendable. Picking up her omnipad, she dialed her old source. Prompt as ever, she didn't have long to wait. "Jara, good evening. I have a marvelous opportunity for you." Breaking back into the Memph house wasn't really a problem. The neighborhood was pretty sparse, and it was clear that no one had much regard for the place. Without any pressure, it seemed like a good idea to give the place a proper look.
"Problem?" Sasham pointed out. We have plans for this house and not near enough credits. Solution? We need to find a realtor who'll let us play fast and loose with the rules. Any ideas?
Gore looked up from the knife he'd been sharpening. The thing was large enough to take off a hand and keep going.
I could call our old fixer. Salat is dead, baby. She got into it with the interior.
Ratch went back to pouring suspect powders and bits of metal into bottles.
Besides, if we're going to become fixers instead of hired muscle, we look pretty stupid calling other fixers, you know. Let's start things off right. We could try old Bolt Cutter. He bought that place up at the spaceport, so he'd know a realtor.
The only visible part of Shrek was her legs, but from the sounds coming from beneath the fridge, it looked like she was inspecting the pipes. Very important when you needed to drain the blood from carcasses. Gore shook his head. Also did. We could. I don't mean this with all seriousness. Try the legal way? He gave the knife a few experimental swings and slid it into the sheath. You sent Will and Tori into a state of emergency once.
Dark mother, that was one time. Quit bitching and try the datanet.
Ratch frisbeed the Omnipad over to Gore.
It's a marvelous thing.
Gore slid the screen open and began reading. When you searched for realtors, the first ones were the completely above-board ones. As if there was such a thing. Real estate could turn the stomach of honest criminals. Still, they were short on credits, so he started to weed. Soon, the ads dropped in quality and started advertising things like, "No questions asked." That made the flavour of things more to his liking. It came out with one very promising realtor.
"Navigate the real estate market like a seasoned veteran," he muttered as he read.
A background check suggested that Vikin Melzi was suspected of a few shady deals, but nobody ever said he failed to close one. Or at least, nobody could prove anything.
"I think we have our agent."
Just as a backup, he saved a few other names, then showed the girls. If this worked out, they were in. If not, they got to eat.
"I'll make the call."
He got on the line.
"Melzi Realty,"
a woman on the other end recited. She sounded brain-dead.
"How can we help you today?"
"Yeah, hi. We have a house we're looking to buy out in Zaratori. The one over on 1313 Mockenbar." As he talked, Gore slid over to the She'll Eats app. He had a little cash left on him, and he was hungry again.
"Okay, give me a sec, I'll put the boss on."
As shitty canned music oozed out of the speaker, Gore ordered something from a seafood restaurant. The thought of the fish at breakfast was still in his mind when another voice brought him back to Shill. "Vikin Melzi, realtor to the stars speaking." If the owner of this new voice sounded any more snobbish, Gore was going to borrow one of Shrek's guns and blow his brains out in the front yard. Luckily, he stayed at an appropriate level of snobbery. "Are you buying or selling?" Melzi's voice made it clear which one he preferred. Fortunately, he was on the right side of things to make him happy. "Buying. It's the one on 1313 Molkenberg. You know it?" "Are you sure that's the one? The property comes with history." "Oh, we know. We heard things, you know. Stuff." As he talked, Gore walked outside, blinking in the bright light. "It's the cheapest one we could find." Technically, robbery was cheaper, but no, they had to keep a low profile. As if torturing your old pimp to death, dueling it out with the sons, of all people, and causing a four-way gang war, then disappearing for 12 years, wasn't already high profile enough. Thing is, we don't actually have all the money yet. Is there a way we could work our way around that little difficulty? The universal sound of thought didn't exactly fill Gore with confidence, but luckily Melzi came through. "I don't usually say yes, but if you're really serious..." "Oh, yeah. We want the place and we'd do anything." "I've been trying to get rid of this house, and it happens I do have an issue. If you do anything, we can do a deal. Do you know the Sea of Souls Club? Tell you what, meet me there tomorrow at 9 and we'll talk." Melzi hung up.
"So," Shrek peered over, curious. "Any luck?" "Well, we may have another job."
The evening was another disaster, and a bothersome one at that. Despite the nest of cushions Andy made for him, a Luntail found sitting on the floor to be terribly uncomfortable, but it placed him firmly on the left side of friend Andy, who was taking an avid interest in the evening's proceedings. Despite his urging, the girls arrived too late, leaving Andy seated next to Cousin Kalira. The best he could manage was to scoot in on Andy's left, with Citri behind him. "I will hold this beach to the last," Alontal declared emphatically. Magical Sailor Bizhen is a classic known for its unique blend of Vascon mythical themes, strong character development, dramatic cliff singing, and simply captivating narrative. On top of that, it's set against a simply vibrant and pastel colour palette that... That's eye cancer. I'd rather be duct taped to a chair and forced to watch Vanilla Ice movies than sit through magic opera guys wearing floral jumpsuits and lipstick, Andre muttered. Anyway, I've never seen this version of the Three Musketeers. Desi and I snuck this out of her father's collection, and this way, nobody has to watch a rerun. Oh yes, the both of you. From her father. Honestly, the notion was nearly infamous, though given what the man was rumoured to have done, the Empress could hardly be faulted. Perhaps Cousin Kalira was better off with a human as a role model. Perhaps that's why she liked him. Though none of that was helping to get her away from friend Andy. In the confines of the day room, the pair were seated so close they might almost be touching. Looking around for support would have been obvious, though the girls were likely beside themselves. Still, it did not merit snubbing Deshin. A favourable acquaintance with the princess and her circle would be considered the coup of the season, and Andy so desperately needed to expand his network. Walking the razor-thin line of building a relationship while maintaining a sense of propriety was paramount. Some closeness was both expected and welcome, but with a familiarity and closeness that would make even an Urbian blush, the evening threatened behaviour that might even become unseemly. So, Deshin, do you know this...
Your name is Citri?
A monotone voice asked, as his view of the pair was blocked by a pair of legs and a tail. Alontal followed them up to see the Pesrin girl standing over him and looking down at Citri.
I learned you would like competition in leaping.
Surely wrapped in the grip of her inner turmoil, it took Citri a moment to focus on the ebony-pelted girl standing silhouetted by the dim lights.
Yes? I mean, sure. You know Kurova leaping? I'm reasonably nimble.
The Pesrin's tail thrashed at the question, and Alontal nearly sneezed as it swept under his nose.
You may be an acceptable challenge. Meet me at the track. Tomorrow morning at 9. Oh, if it's all right, I like to practice early, like around 7. That way there probably won't be anyone else around.
Citri looked flummoxed but seemed to warm to the idea.
Would that be all right? I mean, I don't want to crowd the track from your team.
Alontal found himself the object of sudden scrutiny by unnervingly green eyes, but Sinshiki turned away.
Alone is acceptable.
As suddenly as she'd appeared, the Pesrin girl sauntered off.
Sure, see you?
Citri glanced his way, though Alontal knew she was probably stealing a glance to friend Andy. Deshin had said something, surely a furtive assignation, bedazzling Andy with her charms and worldly ways. Andy laughed in reply. They were practically canoodling. Deshin! He peered past Andy to capture the moment. However awkwardly. There was no choice. It simply had to be done. I so dearly wanted to know. Do you know this Oh, excuse me, please. Hey, Citri. Alontal clenched his jaw and dug a fingernail into his palm. Decorum. You are the son of a Grand Duchess. Mustn't let your frustration show. Two more of the Ailings had the temerity to stand before him with barely the excuse of blocking his view. Alontal mastered his frustration manfully by throwing the pillow under him and smiling graciously as he looked up. And up. Sitting on the floor was no dignified place for a Vascon nobleman. He could be bruised. He recognized the towering figure of Sephir, Citri's jailer, though it was hard to see the girl's face, obscured as it was by her substantial decolletage. The girl beside her, while not insubstantial, at least gave him a wink. He remembered to flounce. It was difficult on the floor to flounce in a manner that was fetching, but he did his best. Look who I found. Citri, this is Jax. I had a word with her about the whole thing you're interested in. You know, the big... Shh, shh, shh. Citri blushed, as red as her hair, and froze before darting a look that was definitely a friend Andy.
I mean, Yes? Yes! I'd be very grateful if we could arrange things tomorrow.
Hey, if you're willing to get your picture taken, it's a deal. The girl named Jax nudged Sephir and grinned. Turned out some people didn't believe Lynn and Mara are twins, so we could use one more. Having a Nubian would be great, and since you're our captive, that sort of makes you honorary ale for the week. If you're willing, I can totally hook you up.
Totally?
It's human slang, and I want to go there after I graduate. Al turned just in time to see the look his friend shot his cousin. With a sudden start, he remembered the Jacksmy girl was a member of House Chelser. His lessons on the major houses of the Imperial Peerage came back to him, and he had to control himself when he remembered just how wealthy they were, and how much more wealthy they were rumoured to be.
Oh, thank Nyota I did my hair.
Friend Andy remained at issue, but it is a truth universally acknowledged that a single girl in possession of a good fortune must be in want of a husband. As the pair moved on, he gave her his very best smile and was rewarded with a blush and a giggle. One had to keep one's hand in it, after all, and if things went well, he might convince father to extend her an invitation to the next season event. Still,
oh, goddess, they're sharing food.
He turned his back for just one moment, and the bowl filled with something had reached the pair. Both had their hands in at the same time, which meant who knew what. Surely their fingertips were entwined in a winsome caress.
So, Deshin,
Alantel squeaked, then coughed pointedly.
About this movie, Oh, hey.
Deshin drew out her omnipad and leaned scandalously close to friend Andy, practically cheek to cheek.
My father says he has a movie for us tomorrow to prep for our class, but I don't know this word.
Huh? I don't know this movie. Alantel nearly swooned as Andy leaned into her to peer at the screen. But chariot? Closest word I'd use would be the high shore word for car or small carriage. It's sort of a... well, you ride in it while it's pulled by domesticated animals? Deshin looked the very image of a perfectly innocent ingenue. To Alantel's eyes, it brazenly revealed the effectiveness of royal calculation. She knew exactly how to draw poor friend Andy out of his usual reticence, and into the palm of her hand like a true seductress. She cocked her hand to one side and asked, You mean a wagon? No, that feels wrong. Chariots were smaller than wagons. Friend Andy was smiling as he shook his head, oblivious to her wiles, as she reeled him in like a fish on a hook. A chariot only has one axle, and you use it for moving people, not goods.
So, Deshin?
Oh, sorry, Al. I forgot to pass to the left. Here, try this. Unless your sister sends some from Texas, this will be your first experience with chocolate. Andre winced back, actually rubbing shoulders with her as he recoiled. Past the bowl, and Alantel looked down at the haphazard mound of confections. He rallied himself gallantly for one more attempt to save his friend from his unwitting peril, but friend Andy held a finger to his lips. Previews are rolling, so we'll talk afterward, okay? The lights dimmed and Alantel stewed, lost in the bitter depths of bleakest failure. Huffing once, he picked out one of the cubes, fitting the wrapper open, to reveal a somewhat waxy cube beneath.
This simply cannot happen. I shall have to redouble my efforts.
Resigned to the bitter setback, he took a bite of chocolate. Andy herded Alantel home after the movie. The Three Musketeers done Disney style was a little more feel-good than he liked, but still a fun watch. According to Desi, the professor had a thing about swords. It was something to talk about later. As for their assignment tomorrow, it was hard for him to see how the movie fit with a class about history, unless you counted the Olympics. Perhaps it'll make more sense after I've seen it. It might be a glimpse into Earth between the world wars. Hopefully it would be good. Of course, it had been kind of hard to fully enjoy the Three Musketeers. Al had gone to town on the chocolate bowl like a squirrel looking at the last peanuts in the world, and only stopped when Andy had tactfully stolen the bowl away from him. Friend Andy? Alantel huddled against him fitfully. Can we get some more chocolate? I think you've had enough, Al. It's pretty late and that shit's dangerous. Tell you what, though, I'll talk to Desi tomorrow and see if we can scrounge up some more. Al made a sound like he was gargling softly, but at least he kept walking. Friend Andy, do you think there's chocolate in the professor's apartment? Maybe. I can't imagine he'd leave something that rare for someone else to find and misuse, but maybe he left some cooking chocolate or... You can cook with it? Al, I've got a recipe from my grandma that'll make you see the god of chocolate. If the professor doesn't have any, I'll write Maestra Paella on Earth and get her to send me some real chocolate, the good stuff from Mexico and Central Europe. Then I'll introduce you to triple chocolate chunk cookies. Zinchiki tried to ponder the movie as a distraction. Portions of the film had been admirable, though the heroine, Lady de Winter, came to a tragic end. Rather than give her enemies the satisfaction of her death, she'd taken her own life, yet would go uneaten by her allies. Her death was regrettable, but the film displayed admirable aggression, hinting at mighty feasts. Food had been served during the viewing. Chocolate was quite acceptable, though the captive male had become enamoured, lost in the grip of his food/bliss. It happened, though meat was always preferable. She arrived a half hour before the film, the better to stalk her prey. "And I was racing ships while you were still in a training bra, lubber," the Zatara girl said haughtily, as she opened a bottle of Oberodo. Desala took a glass and shrugged. "Yeah, well, at least the training worked. For me." It was a well-timed blow, though one should never leave wounded prey. If looks could kill, Desala would have been dead upon the floor. Half a bottle later, and their giggling became unseemly. Thankfully, they were snoring by the time the film began. Their bonding ritual was unfortunate. Pinning the Urbian's death on Desala had seemed a promising alibi. Zenshiki considered following Citri/Delicious home, as the crowd lingered in the day room. The scent of her earlier nearly made her drool. It would have taken almost no effort to trip on the fidgeting male at her feet and fall, accidentally raking her teeth along one succulent ear.
"No, I will not succumb to dishonor. She is my ally's captive."
At least until the morning. If Citri/Delicious won their competition fairly honourably, then she was ripe for gutting. Her tongue rolled over one incisor at the thought of hot Urbian blood.
"How dark mother help me! What would Sunchaser say?"
Memories of their Pathfinder bubbled to the surface. Happy memories back when their father had been well. The younger women would sing before dinner.
"Start with the fingers so tender and lean, braised in a savoury glaze to a sheen. Dip them in sauces sweet and sour, and let them simmer, for an hour."
Zenshiki nearly stumbled as she walked, and her stomach rumbled in sympathy. Happy childhood memories of song, as she'd suddenly watched the family cooking as a kid. Sometimes stealing a bit of liver, or, if she'd been particularly good, a bit of heart. Every part was a delight. Her stomach rumbled again. Despite the shoal day roast served for dinner, she was unaccountably hungry. That was the thing about fingers. The taste was an itch that was hard to scratch, served fried and...
"I must control myself. This must be honourable. I require assistance."
Asking her hahakt was impossible. Despite seeming to have accepted his honour, Warwick was a wily opponent, which was, of course, why he was a good hahakt to begin with. A good chase only worked up the appetite. Calling Raikishi was out. Her sister was honourable to a fault, but if Kalis got word that a gift was being procured for her by anyone but Sunchaser... While she seldom looked to others, the role of Pathfinder was sacrosanct. After a lingering moment of hesitation, Zenshiki pulled out her omnipad and dialed.
"Hey, kid, how goes it in the big city?"
Sunchaser's voice was rich and warm despite the hour, but a warm and winning manner with others was her forte. Zenshiki knew it was a talent she did not share, but she could still appreciate the subterfuge.
"I am approximately 43 miles from the heart of the capital, while the Duchess estate is... Figure of speech, kid. Just making small talk." "Since we share the same warband, I presume you are only attempting deception in your spare time."
There was a lingering sigh over the line.
"You know, you really are your mother's kid."
Zenshiki fought off the urge to preen, but her pelt fluffed slightly, even in the evening chill.
"I have a situation. My hahakt would not be unbiased in this matter, and I hoped for your guidance." "Well, this is an occasion. I have an ethical quandary."
Zenshiki found a quiet study nook and huddled around her omnipad for comfort.
"I have someone I am considering bringing home to dinner." "Home to dinner, eh? You mean I do. Hey, I know they aren't starving you at that school. This must be pretty rare." "Rare would be ideal. Possibly medium." "Okay. You know, we don't go in for special guests these days. Lots of folks don't understand, and it's not like there's a need. What's got you a sciatic and a twist?" I am concerned about procuring the invitation. I worry it might not be a good thing.
There was another sigh.
Good. Let me tell you something about good and bad that I told your birth mother when we were young. She was always worried about doing the right thing on a job. I mean, come on, we're hired guns, kid. An ethical dilemma during a firefight slows you down.
Shinshiki's Asaic twitched fretfully.
Valid. Look, you're young and you've got a bright future. Just stop worrying so much. There's only two certainties, and those are life and death. I thought taxes were involved. Kid, we live in a starship. You think we stick around to pay taxes?
Sunchase's spray of laughter settled eventually.
Look, people live, people die, people kill. You live or die, thrive or fail, and eat or you starve. It's how things are, and good has nothing to do with it. It's nature for us. It's nature for those Shorvanti girls. It's nature for any Rakiri, and according to your mother, it's damn sure's nature for your and Patvirus Hakaks. Trust me, your mother saw Warwick standing over you and said he's a born killer, even if he may not act like it. Why do you think she made the deal? How is he, anyway? He gave me a sword. Pfft, see? You worry too much. Trust me. Why get an ulcer over being good when you can enjoy being good at what you're good at?